Welcome to Back on the Broomstick,
A modern witch's spoken word grimoire.
where two witchy friends from way back are reconnecting to their pagan roots after a long period of mundanity.
We're rewalking the path of the wise and trying out all the latest spells, rituals, and magical theory in today's witchcraft and pagan practices.
So grab your wand and your incense,
Your cauldron and your crystals
and join us
as we get
back on the broomstick.
Hi, and welcome to Back on the Broomstick. I'm Layla, and on this episode, we're diving into one of our favorite subjects, tarot. We're talking difficult tarot cards, the ones that we struggle with. And I'm not talking your regular problems with death, the tower, and the ever-lovely Three of Swords. No, I'm talking the cards that just don't speak to us, the ones that rub us the wrong way. Problem tarot cards of the deck.
And I'm Chelle, and as much as I go on and on about tarot, I actually have a little pile of cards that I want to talk about today that I find stressful, annoying, bullshit, whatever you want to call it. Like, these are cards that I have struggled with for years and years and years. So I'm excited, and who doesn't like talking about tarot? So let's dive into tarot cards that kind of suck.
Yeah, the ones that we struggle with, the ones that sometimes we wish just wouldn't come out in a reading, and yet they always seem to. There are some cards that everybody kind of struggles with, particularly in the beginning. Most people, anyway.
They got a bad rap.
Sometimes it's because of the imagery or because of past associations, but we're going to name off the 5 top cards that most people have trouble with. And they are the Devil, Death,
Three of Swords,
the Tower,
and I'm stuck between the Ten of Swords and the Four of Swords.
Yeah, Ten of Swords is typically the one right up there. Honestly, any of the suit of swords, people tend to have difficulty with. But it's the imagery of like the swords in the back or the difficulty of the tower with the bodies falling down from it. It's the idea of death and destruction.
Or that devil card that either can bring back, flashback trauma from previous religious experience or what have you. But these cards kind of, just the images, I feel like they were meant to kind of provoke a feeling, and they do. But these aren't the cards that we're actually talking about.
No. Most of us, as we learn tarot and as we progress through this system, we discover that, oh wow, death doesn't really mean death. And yeah, the Tower is difficult and the Ten of Swords is difficult, and that's putting it lightly. But these are lessons that happen and that we can survive and thrive and be better through. These lessons happen, bad things happen, but it's not the end of the world usually.
Sometimes everybody needs a little tower time in their life, I think.
We wish it wasn't so, but sometimes you got to get rid of the old to start something new. And sometimes that means tearing it all down. So, as we move away from being frustrated or scared of or worried about those cards, new cards become problems and assholes in the tarot deck.
Now, for me, I actually, like I said before, I kind of actually have a grouping, and I want to start with, I have a major arcana card. It is like a thorn in my side. It is something I have struggled with forever, and that is going to be number 14, Temperance. Like, what the fuck is temperance even? Like I know what the card means. Like, I've read the meaning. Like, I get it, but like, I don't get it. Like, I just don't get it.
Well, since you're not someone who takes the middle ground and rarely slows down, I'm not surprised that Temperance is not your favorite card.
Oh, so that's it.
Yeah, so if Temperance is telling you, oh, hey, you're acting a little too hasty, or maybe you need to kind of find that balance, find more of a natural flow, and Chelle is like, oh, heck no.
That's anti-me.
Yeah, hasty's like your middle name, like rush in and do the thing.
That's really funny because that almost makes sense, because that is so totally not like me. So it would make sense that I would have a hard time associating with that card. It's just when it comes up in a reading, I literally roll my eyes like, really? I don't want to deal with what this means. And here's the thing, it's not just the card, because when you struggle with a card, the way I read tarot, it messes with my story. I kind of read them as a story. And when I get one of these cards that we're going to talk about today, it messes with my story. And that it's a struggle. It's frustrating. It's something I got to work through. And every time I shuffle the cards, I just pray I don't get these.
A part of what we're talking about is not just that we struggle with the meaning. We know the meaning of these cards. It's that for whatever reason, when they show up in a reading, like you said, it kind of throws a wrench in it. It makes it difficult to read. Maybe the meaning that we know doesn't ever seem to really fit or flow when it drops into a spread for whatever reason.
It'll like all of a sudden make a reading make no sense to me.
Yeah. And temperance is one of those. I think personally, I think part of this is like the energy of the card is so diametrically opposed that the two of you are like, oh, fuck no, we can't be together. We're going to bang heads. But for me, I have a little bit of a problem with temperance. Not a big one, not as big of one as you do, but I don't like the angel imagery.
I
I,
get it.
I, I don't.
It does scream Abrahamic religion.
It does. And so that's an inherent bias, an implicit bias that I have, so that I know that I have to kind of get over that. And sometimes for me, that it feels like the idea of harmony and balance. And I'm just like, oh, stop with the angelic crap. I'm so done with this. And so sometimes I want it to be a little bit different, I guess, a little spikier, a little more powerful.
And I'm definitely not a blow sunshine up somebody's behind kind of
Right.
person. And I feel like this is that card.
Yeah, sometimes it's a little too angelic, a little too balanced, and sometimes that type of energy is not what's needed in the situation, I guess. So I don't know. I do have a little bit of a bias against this card, although I like that type of energy most of the time.
Now, do you have a card that you struggle with that is a part of the major arcana?
Absolutely. It was the first one I thought of. It is the card that I will butt heads with every single time it comes down in a reading, and that is the Hierophant. Can't
Yikes.
stand the dude. Even if the deck renames him to the High Priest, I still think that he is an insufferable blowhard, and I don't like his opinion. I don't like convention. I don't like authority. I don't like the idea of this is the way it is, and if you don't like it, go away. I don't like that.
When authority is judging you.
Yeah, and it feels just like institutionalized religion. It feels like institutionalized knowledge, gate kept and stuffy. It feels very stuffy to me and very, oh, I hate to use the buzzword patriarchal, but it's very patriarchal. It feels very father figure, my way or the highway. No compromise.
I'm
I
the
don't like it.
boss.
Yeah, it's too binding. It's too legal. It's too, I guess legal is not exactly the right word, but strict, authoritarian.
It's very black and white with no gray area.
Yeah, and I am not one to, I don't love rigid social structure. I don't love rigid rules. I don't love unchangeability. So I tend to butt heads with this card, and I have a difficulty reading it even in a constructive way because it just pisses me off.
So actually, that's interesting that we kind of both, our first cards are cards that are kind of the opposite of who we are.
Yeah.
I find that interesting.
I didn't realize that until I started judging you on the card that you picked. It's like, oh, well, this is because you have bias against that card, and so you're just being prejudiced against that
And
card.
then the Hierophant walked in the door.
Yeah, and then I heard myself talk, and I was like, "That's you with the Hierophant, you sneaky." Yeah.
Now, this next, I'm going to say grouping, kind of has to all go together in a grouping.
Oh
And
no.
it's funny because we were talking previously about, the cards that we struggle with. And
Hmm.
I found humor in the fact that as a Gen Xer, I am struggling, and it has actually, one has nothing to do with the other. I'm just making a joke out of it. But I have problems with sixes and sevens. Like
Six,
the six, seven,
seven, six,
6, 7.
seven. I hate
I
that. I think I hate myself for doing that, but I had to.
I'm too old for that. I have always struggled with sixes and sevens, and it does not matter if it is the wands, the cups, the pentacles, the swords. It is the concept of 6 and 7 in the progression. I actually have all my sixes and sevens laid out here right now. And I get the perseverance and experience part of it, but like I
Yeah.
just don't get it. And again, same with temperance. If I get a 6 or 7 in a reading, I'm just like, meh, you
Yeah.
know?
My next cards are also all minor arcana cards, and for similar reasons. And I think let's explain the progression. For people who aren't familiar with tarot, the minor arcana are your day-to-day life. These are the little minute details. And much like the major arcana tells the fool's journey, tells a story from 0 to 21, it tells a story. The minor arcana also tell a story from 1 to 10, and then your court cards. That story is the same. It's the same general story of progression. Think of it literally like one, you're starting at the beginning with an idea, with a spark, with the very first step, the first thing that you do. And then twos are the next part where you're kind of maybe at a little bit of a conflict where you're thinking about it. Threes are a little further down the path. Fours, you come to like your first step where you feel like you're making progress. And then fives, you're at the middle, you're still moving forward. Then we get to Chelle's difficult sixes and sevens. And this is where you ever start cleaning your room and you're like, I am going to completely clean my living room and I'm going to rearrange it. And you start cleaning and pulling things out of the shelves and you've pulled your furniture out of every single position.
And then you
And
get halfway through and you're like,
you lose your momentum and you have to reassess, right? You have to re-find your footing, realign. Then you have challenges, you have choices, and you have to assess and where you're going. You have the uncertainty. Those are sixes and sevens. That's 6-7 territory. And that's why it can be very difficult for people. Then you move to the eights where you've made it through. You
reestablished your footing and then are completing the
Then
task.
you get to the nines, you have your first successes, 10. Yeah, okay, you get the picture. So we're at sixes and sevens. And, there's even that saying, right? At sixes and sevens, even before the new phrase right now, at being at sixes and sevens meant you were troubled, right?
Right.
So being at sixes and sevens is an old phrase that means being in confusion or disarray, according to Google. And that's literally where you're at.
So yeah, I mean, with 6s and 7s, I feel like I get the idea has sparked, you've got it underway, but then like you said with your analogy with cleaning, you kind of just stop and pause for a second and are like, wait a minute, what am I doing again? Let me regroup. And so I guess sometimes that regrouping in the middle of a reading kind of throws me off or is difficult to read that whole picture, that whole story with that abrupt confusion, sometimes dead center.
Yeah, and having that type of energy in a reading is gonna throw it off. That's a weird place to be in. You've come really far, but things might look worse now than they did when you started. And you start to lose energy, you start to lose steam, and it starts to feel weird. And why did I even start this? So it can be very strange cards and very strange, hard energy to have in a reading.
And it's interesting. I also think that it's two whole sets of numbers in a row. It's not just, like a 3 and a 7, it's that hump between you're halfway there and how we finishing this.
Yeah, exactly. And that can, a lot of times, that's where people abandon projects because it's
Right.
too hard to get past that. It's too hard. You've spent all this energy, but you're in the worst part of it now where you need the energy. And you also don't have the impetus from the beginning, that first initial, woohoo, I'm doing this thing. That's all kind of worn off too. Now you either need to dig in and finish this or decide if you need to cut your losses.
Right. Right. So what is your next card or grouping?
Well, my next card is the Two of Pentacles. I have a
Oh,
tough time with the Two of Pentacles. And the biggest reason is because it is both balance and control and taking care of the situation, but it can also be being off balance, being off center, and not juggling things well. And sometimes I have a very hard time discerning which one that is.
well, I think with the Two of Pentacles, I think of like, because like, how like in the traditional Rider Waite, he's like got these two pentacles that look like they're in like a figure eight, like
Right.
band.
Yeah.
So when I see that picture, I kind of think of someone who can quickly adapt. You know how like when a juggler, like if something happens, you go, you got to move, you got to catch. You threw the ball the wrong angle, it's coming different. I see that sometimes as being adaptable, being able to accomplish maybe multiple things at the same time, even.
Yeah, and I do see that as the person being able to adapt. I do see that meaning in it, but are you in control or are you not in control? Like when this pops in, okay, so you're a person who can adapt, but are you adapting well or are you not adapting well? It never seems to give a clear answer. I just feel like it's very uncertain. It always comes across as wishy-washy to me.
Like the juggler at a circus, though, you think he's got it all under control and everything's in balance and everything's all even keel. Whereas in his mind, he's thinking, I threw that the wrong way. That didn't go right. I had to step back. I have to move forward. In his mind, things might be going horrifically, but to an outside person, everything looks cohesive and smooth.
I really like that view of it, Shell, because that does kind of, I mean, it doesn't help resolve the card for me, but I do like that aspect of the meaning. And the
I
next
view
time,
that card as a circus juggler.
well, I like the idea that you said of on the surface, on the outside, he appears to be juggling those coins just fine. But the internal struggle that no one sees is very different. That's the exact opposite.
Exactly.
That's the uncertainty and the, am I going to drop this? So it looks like mastery on the outside, but on the inside. So I like that
Masking
meaning.
fears.
So I think I'm going to try that. I'll try that the next time this card pops up and I'll see if that helps to make the reading flow. Because when these blocker cards pop up, they can really halt a reading. They make the whole thing sometimes confusing. You and I tend to read in a tableau format. We take the positions of the spread into consideration. That's part of it. And the individual meanings of the cards in those positions. But then we look at the spread as a whole and we match the cards together as a whole thing, as a whole story. And we start to read that story using clues from all over the spread and in each card. And so if you get a card that's difficult, that can block that story flow and it can kind of make the whole reading feel off. I think I'll try that meaning that you gave me for the Two of Pentacles next time it pops up in a spread and see if that helps the juggling of the reading go a little more smoothly, I guess.
Is there another card that you struggle with?
Yes, actually, there's more. So there's
I
the
feel
Four of
like I
Cups,
covered eight in one shot.
right?
So,
So we also have the Four of Cups, and that's another one that I just don't. Again, I get the meaning, missed opportunities, apathy, ennui. It's seeing things offered to you and not taking them. This particular four, I'm just not in love with. I just don't like it.
I sometimes see it as looking at things from a different perspective.
Yeah. I mean, it's not that I don't get this card, it's just I don't like it. I don't
Okay.
love the feeling that this card gives. It looks kind of nice. It looks like someone's relaxing under a tree and there's these four cups. Everything looks great. But this card is like that shitty feeling of ennui that you get where you're bored, you don't know what you want to do, you don't know what you want to eat, you have everything available to
You're
you.
hungry, but your belly hurts.
Yeah, you just don't want any of it. Or you're so disappointed that it's difficult to see new opportunities. It's just not a great place to be. So that's partly why I don't. And that's why my last card goes along with this as well. And that's the Nine of Swords. Because that one
Yee.
to me is anxiety, sleepless nights, feeling like crap. So the Four of Cups and the Nine of Swords, I don't like them because I just don't like that particular feeling in either of them. Like the depression and the apathy and not seeing good things that are there or that ennui feeling of the Four of Cups. I don't like that. And then there's the anxiety, the fear, the internal struggles that keep you up at night of the Nine of Swords. So when those show up, I hate those. They're just sad. They're not good feelings, so I don't like them.
I have this weird tendency to always put a song to everything. And your Nine of Swords issue reminds me of the song Anxiety. And when I see Nine of Swords, I do think of that song Anxiety because it's kind of like, here I am, and I got anxiety, but I got to muscle through it because I'm
Mhm.
almost there and I just want to puke, but I got to do it.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And even the imagery, it's interesting because the Four of Cups looks like a nice card. it looks nice. It looks like someone daydreaming and hanging out. And sometimes it can be that, but it's inherently like a yucky feeling. It's almost like a trapped feeling when you don't have the energy or to get up and do something, to get up and follow your dreams. You just kind of feel stuck. It's just not a nice feeling. Whereas the Nine of Swords looks really bad and
It kind of
feels
looks
really bad.
depressing.
Right. It's very depressing. It's very anxiety inducing just looking at it. Like you see a person weeping in bed with these nine swords over their head. You just know that they feel like crap, that everything is awful, and they have the weight of the world on their shoulders. So those cards, when they pop up, you just know you're in for a bad time.
And obviously it depends on what deck you use because different decks are going to have different imagery. But with any of the Rider-Waite-Smith variations, one thing that has always struck me on the Nine of Swords that I think some people kind of bypass. If you take a good look at this card, it actually looks like they are in bed with someone and they are sitting up crying while the other person is still laying there. And I always found that to be striking in this card that there were, I felt like two people in bed, but one person was kind of sleeping and comfortable while the other person was up and distraught. Obviously depending on the cards around it, because I do read it as a story, would depend on how I took that. But it was never lost on me that it looked like there was a second body in that bed that seemed
Ah.
rested and peaceful, like it wasn't being bothered.
See, I never saw that as a person. I always just saw that as like the pillow and the bed pad. But seeing
Oh,
that as a person gives that a slightly different perspective. There's the other person.
I've always just seen it as a person. Yeah.
And that's the thing with tarot cards is depending on which deck, which artist you go with, you might see different things in the cards. One of the cards that I picture for the Nine of Swords, it looks almost like a crypt slab, like a marble slab that they're on with just one very thin blanket with the nine swords above them. And so
Okay.
that gives it an even harsher feeling because it's not a comfortable bed. It's almost like they're on the slab of a crypt and no comfortable blanket, no pillow. It's just stark and cold and difficult.
I guess it's going to depend on the imagery.
It'll depend on the imagery, but the idea of anxiety keeping you up at night and your loved one is right next to you, sleeping peacefully and dreaming beautifully, that can make it even harder and more isolating. So, depending on the imagery of these cards, you might pull out more. You might like a card more, or you might like it less, depending on the deck.
And it could also, with how I see a second person there, could also mean taking on burdens that are maybe yours and someone else's, but you're not letting them take the burden, or you're taking on other people's burdens, and that's more than you can, you've bit off more than you can chew with that.
Yeah.
So it could be about just taking on burdens that maybe don't belong to you, or that
Mm-hmm.
you're not opening up and maybe sharing to help the situation.
Yeah. So for cards like the Nine of Swords or the Four of Cups, things that you just don't like. If you just don't like the Death card or Tower card, that can make you feel kind of a way when they pop up in a reading. And I tend to like to try and work with those cards, particularly if I'm going to be reading for other people. You want to work through any of these issues that you have so your personal issues don't come out when you're trying to do a reading for someone else, or if you're trying to get a clear answer for yourself. You don't want your card biases to pop up and smack you in the face when you're trying to read a spread. So, do you have any advice for someone on how they can kind of handle cards that they don't like or struggle with?
I've put in extra time with those cards, whether that has been working with the card, meditating with the card, writing down every single thing I can find about the card and then reading it 85 times and rewriting it again. And that's where I feel, I am comfortable enough with these cards, but we are coworkers that can work together but don't necessarily get along outside of work.
Yeah, I like the coworkers thing. I would say that when I first started working with cards and I had difficulty with them, I tended to write a lot of stories about them. I would do the thing where like you said, meditate with the card, work with it a lot. But I liked to take the card and not just write down the details of it, but write a whole story about it. Make it the center of a story. Make up something about the picture. Maybe that relates to the meaning of the card, maybe that doesn't. But by writing a story about it and by capturing all the details, that helped me to take a bit more ownership of it and to clarify my feelings on it and helped me to uncover some of the reasons why I didn't like the cards. Like, I know I don't like the hierophant because I have trouble with authority. I get that. I know that that's a thing with me. And so I understand that, and that helps me to understand the card a lot better. So by really diving into them and getting their details down, and even by changing them, by writing, write some fan fiction and make it up, make it different if you want to, but that can help you to understand the spirit of a card.
And I also again want to say do some research. Every deck you get has a little booklet with it. There's tons of tarot books out there, there's tons of sites out there, there's tons of tarot apps out there. Get to know your card. With tarot, truly, the more you know, the more you grow. And I think that there's never a point with tarot where you've learned it all.
No. How many decades have we been reading tarot cards?
I know, and I still find myself researching certain cards, and especially if I get a new deck that I'm into that looks completely different than a traditional deck. I take a deep dive into why is this particular imagery trying to represent this particular card, and kind of deep dive it that way. So I think with tarot, there are going to be cards, there are going to be whole decks, and you just gotta kind of take the time. If you spend enough time with these cards, you will be able to work through and push through any issues you have with one or more cards, I think.
I agree. And one of my favorite things with tarot cards is to talk about them with other people who like tarot cards. There's
Yep.
nothing more fun than sitting down with some people and being like, all right, I can't stand the Hierophant. The Nine of Swords gives me anxiety. Let's talk about these cards. What do you think? What do you see? And I always learn something new every single time from new readers, from readers who have been doing it forever, from people who use different systems. I always learn something new, and that just makes me really happy with tarot. And if you don't have people in real life, there's a ton of places online. There's Biddy Tarot that's amazing. They have discussion boards. And one of my favorite resources is the subreddit Tarot on Reddit, because they literally will go in depth on just one single card and everyone chimes in with their thoughts, their ideas, their history with it. And there's just so much in these cards. There's so much meaning and so much depth. It's a lot of fun to go into even the bad ones.
With all of that being said, I still say grab a deck, grab a couple hundred decks.
Haha.
Spend time with your cards, because they're going to be like an old friend, and sometimes you and your old friend have a day, and tarot's going to be the same way. Sometimes with this old friend there's going to be a card, and that's okay. That doesn't mean stop tarot, stop doing what you're doing. That just means keep on keeping on, and push through. It's worth it.
And you never know when a card is going to suddenly click and be your best friend, or when one will start following you around and start being your worst enemy.
Stalker
They
cards.
happen. Before we end, how about we each pull a card?
Okay.
I have been using the B Tarot by Christopher Hughes with art by Nadia Turner. So I'm going to pull a card from this deck. The Ten of Wands. Figures. At least it's not the Ten of Swords.
Right now, I am using a wonderful new deck that I got for my birthday. It is Bone Stone and Earth Flesh by Avalon Cameron. So, the card that I have pulled is the Nine of Cups.
Interesting. Now, the Ten of Wands is interesting to me because this is a third version of a card you and I were talking about this morning. We were talking about how cards from different decks can give you a slightly different feeling, a slightly different version of the
Right.
card meaning. And to illustrate that, you pulled the Ten of Wands card from your Rider-Waite-Smith deck, along with the Ten of Wands card from the Bone Stone and Earth Heart, Earth Spirit,
Earth Flesh.
Earth Flesh deck. And they're the same card, but different images. And so now I have the third Ten of Wands with yet another image. This has the wands are barely visible. They're in a pack on the ground behind a beekeeper who's looking off into the distance, and a bee with fully laden pollen legs is flying towards him. Now, the Ten of Wands is carrying a heavy load. It's stress. It's the end of a difficult cycle is in sight. It's you have maybe taken on too much and you might need to delegate some of that. But you are making it to the end. You are coming in hot. You're overburdened. You're overworked. You're stressed out, but you are making it to the goal. Come hell or high water, you've succeeded and you're making it to the goal. You're almost there. And that's what this card says to me. Difficult, but you've made it.
So with my Nine of Cups, in this deck, the Nine of Cups is called the Peacock Queen and the Elixir of Life. And this card is
Gorgeous.
gorgeous.
Honestly, every
Absolutely
card in that
gorgeous.
deck is gorgeous.
They look like watercolor paintings. They're fabulous. So in this picture, you've got a peacock queen dumping a cauldron full of rainbow liquid onto all the people below. This card is giving me, joy, satisfaction, completion. This is kind of being content.
It's interesting because the 10 of wands that I have is like this heavy burden and you're almost to the end of your struggles are in sight. And the
And
nine
this
of
isn't being
cups,
fulfilled.
yeah, that's fulfillment, contentment, completion. So it's almost like these two cards together are saying there's hard work. There's going to be struggle and hard work.
But there will be joy at the end.
Yeah, you will make it to the end. Both of these cards are saying you will make it to the end. Your Nine of Cups is saying there's going to be a lot of joy there, a lot of contentment. Bask in that gratitude of the hard work that you did to get you there. I like that. So nines and tens at the end of our episode. How fitting.
Thank God it wasn't sixes or sevens.
Ah, well, on that lovely note, we think you should all go play with your tarot cards, pull out the ones that piss you off, and have a conversation with them.
So don't forget, folks, like us, subscribe, give us hearts, give us stars, send us an email. Heck, send us mail at Back on the Broomstick, P.O. Box 21, Tioga, PA 16946.
We have so many fun things coming up for you guys. We've got tarot readings on our website, solariums coming up, interviews. We're going to be at festivals presenting workshops. We have a summer full of fun for all of our listeners and hopefully for us too. So go grab your cards, see what adventures this summer has in store for you. Hold on to those nines and tens and try not to worry too much about the sixes and sevens. And we will see you next week for another episode. Until then, be wise, be wicked,
And keep it witchy.